Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sibme Coach Replay Show. I'm super excited to have everyone joining us today. This is a hot topic that we have. Lots of questions have been coming in from our Sibme customers and a lot of our friends and colleagues in the education field. And today I've asked our Chief Operating Officer and former teacher, educator, supporter, mentor, you've done it all, TJ, to join us. So TJ Hoffman is our guest coach for today, and we're going to be talking about just how we can, what are some best practices, some important considerations for us as coaches as we're virtually coaching our teachers who are remote teaching. And so some key things to remember. Some schools are just getting started with this. Others, for our district, it's our fourth week next week in this remote learning environment. And I'll tell you that it has continued to evolve and get more refined and sophisticated each week. So we'll have some tips for you guys if you are just getting started or if you are going a little bit further with it. So welcome, TJ.
Thanks, Cory. I'm excited to be with you today, and I'm excited to talk to everyone. This is a topic that I am very passionate about. I love talking about remote engagement. When I first left a campus, my very first job in professional development was a digital learning specialist. And so I have a lot of thoughts about the topic. It's not just about technology, it's about a lot of different things, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, you and me both. I know we've been talking a lot about this internally here at Sibme, and before joining the Sibme team, I was a digital innovation specialist. So, and I've got the background in special education, and so I always come to it through that lens of thinking about our exceptional learners. And so those are some really where I think a lot of people are kind of struggling is once I have the basics of, I can't just put an article out there and then ask students to respond with a written response. But then also the technology access that we've got to think a little bit about, and then some just those best practices. So let's start off with just talking a little bit about what as supporters of our teachers, what do we need to where should we start? What do we need to kind of remember as we get going with these conversations with the teachers we're supporting?
Yeah, and I think that the role of a coach in general, the way I define it, the role of a coach is to sort of be that guide that helps the teacher develop the knowledge and skills that they need to reach and teach all students, right? And that's partly defining good instruction. It's partly providing them with resources, and it's partly still helping them to co-create things. So just to start, I think we internally had some conversations that resulted in a resource that we're going to make available. I know in the Coach Replay takeaways, the Be a Champ in the Digital Classroom sort of uses something from my background. I was a Safe and Civil Schools campus when I was still working as a teacher, and then as a campus leader, we use Safe and Civil Schools, and I loved the CHAMPS model, the CHAMPS formula for defining the ways in which teachers and students interact with one another in a classroom. And so I thought it was a good way to frame this. I do want to give credit to Safe and Civil Schools and to everyone who put this together. I mean, this is certainly CHAMPS is not my idea, but it's a good framework, right? And so you're thinking about the ways in which teachers and students converse both between teacher and student, and then also student to student, that sort of thing. You're thinking about students ask for help. You're thinking about the way in which they act in a digital classroom. You're thinking of the materials they need, how they get those materials, and then you're thinking about participation and success. And thinking through those different letters that in that acronym, I think is really helpful in guiding the sorts of decisions that teachers need to make in a digital classroom. And it's a thing that a coach can help them do. So each classroom is going to be different in the digital environment, the exact same way that each classroom is different in a real environment, right? No two classrooms are alike, no two groups of students are alike, no two teachers are alike. But all of these activities need to take place in all of those classrooms. And so thinking through some of these questions, like, how will students continue to use academic vocabulary in interactions with one another? How will you group students? How will you structure materials and create digital bins the same way you have in the classroom so that they can get those materials when they need them and things like that?
Yeah, and I think this is important. And again, it just kind of helps us really go back and start with the basics that we would be doing in the first weeks of school, or as we prepare for the first days of school, is thinking about how we're going to organize our classroom, our learning space, the materials that we have here. What expectations do we need to set? Because we're going to have to rethink expectations a little bit for the remote learning environment. And then what's engagement, and how will I provide feedback, and making sure that that's meaningful engagement, not just compliance, and but really kind of just making sure that we're squared away in those areas, which is why I love this document. This one's been a popular one since we released it in the Teachable Moments newsletter. But I think this is making sure that we kind of start here, taking a look at how teachers have organized their classroom. Do they need support in any of these areas? Do they have questions here? Should we go through each of these sections in this guide and think through that? Is a great starting point, I think, for us as we're virtually coaching our teachers. So,
and I think, good, safe, and simple schools people know that the CHAMPS protocol is the beginning of this, but not just this, right? It's also, once I've defined what my LMS is going to look like, once I've defined the schedule for the week, once I've defined the lessons that they're going to do, I need to teach it and I need to practice it, right?
Yes.
I think that there's this need, because we've all been in chaos for such a long time. We need to get back to normalcy. We want to start teaching kids again. We feel like we need to start getting back into content. You need to pause. You don't have time to not rehearse these things, give kids and their families a chance to understand and demonstrate knowledge of these new protocols for interacting with one another and with the teacher and with the materials in the digital classroom.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's been the big thing. I know our district has continued, again, to refine what that looks like for my second grader and fourth grader. Some little things like teachers are starting to share the organization. Our math and science in our intermediate campus has worked really well together as a team. And from the get-go has had a very organized, streamlined, clutter-free course page that they update frequently. And they all kind of said by 9 a.m., your content will be available. Last week, the whole district switched to some district consistency and said by 9 p.m. the day before, new content will come out. So, I mean, those are all really important conversations. And then that's also shared through multiple ways with families. They're sharing it on their Facebook page. They're sharing it via emails. Teachers are sharing it. It's also being posted in the student learning spaces as well. And so one big tool that I think helps in sharing these expectations and where to find things is to use video, Screencastify and Loom, or jumping on a Zoom by yourself and recording your screen, or recording yourself as you're going through your computer screen. However you're going to do that, give them a tour of the learning space. Show them where those digital bins are. If you ever forget a password or don't know how to find one of the links we're going to use every Friday, it's right here in this folder. Having some of those things can be helpful. As I've been helping teachers, I've been having them just walk me through their online learning space, giving me a tour so we can talk about some ways to kind of best organize that. And then also talking about some of the assignments that they're doing or the tasks they're having and making sure they're pretty inclusive. So definitely a place to keep those things in mind. And this is, again, a great resource to share with teachers to help kind of begin building a plan and start simple. That's the key to all of this, right? It's starting really simple. You can always add in some fun things like Flipgrid and different resources down the road. Our teachers didn't start using video until the second or third week, and they didn't start conferencing until this week. So again, this was our third week. So slowly add on those things so everyone can adjust, I think.
Yeah, we're educators are great at scaffolding, right? And so as we continue to go through this, and also, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a little while, but like planning for 6 weeks from now is sort of an exercise in futility. We have no idea what's going to be happening in 6 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. So just sort of little bit, and let's scaffold it in as the weeks progress and find new ways to reach new kids, and then help everyone learn.
Yeah, definitely. So, so keeping those things in mind, really specifically, let's talk about the virtual coaching. And, again, you talked a little bit about that role, but what are some other things for us as instructional leaders, as coaches and campus instructional leaders to do?
So the first piece of advice that I have is actually a piece of advice that I would never, ever, ever give to a coach in sort of, what are they calling it? The before times?
Yeah.
I wouldn't give this advice to someone in another environment, but I do think that there is a role to be played by instructional support, whether that's coaches, administrators, PFs, all that sort of stuff. Just make some stuff for teachers, right? Creating resources so that teachers have them as grab and go things that they can go ahead and use. That's going to be very helpful. And again, you got to think about the reality of the teachers' lives as well, right? I mean, they're with a whole different set of things. Just like you've got your daughter back there painting in the background.
Picasso, yeah.
Everybody's got things going on in their lives, and so this is a time where it does kind of need to be an all hands on deck sort of experience. Where a coach, I might be doing some more resource creation. I might be a co-teacher in a classroom. I might be doing all sorts of things that's just like, let's get to kids together, right? And that's normally not the kind of advice that I'm inclined to give to coaches, because I don't think that's the role of a coach. But it's, in this context, I think it's important.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that, again, something that I've seen within my children's district is, they're also helping, because they're there with the teachers. They're still collaborating and they're supporting. When they see something that's working really well, they share that with other teachers. So one thing that I've seen really grow as a resource across both the elementary and intermediate for my kids' schools is checklists, which is something that I was doing like from day one in our Sibme Moms. I talked a little bit about how I scheduled our day for working from home with kids learning from home, and how in the morning, I'll go to their LMS and I'm, printing the page out and creating a little checklist, because my oldest has ADHD and he just really functions best with checklists. I mean, who doesn't? Now teachers are creating that, we're calling them a learning plan, and some of them are doing it for the whole week. Some of them is just by the day. Others have created, and one of the ones that one of the instructional coaches in the district shared was, here's how math does it. And so let me just give you a blank just a frame of a checklist, and then modify it as you need to. And it's a great resource to kind of help their learners and the parents manage the remote learning. So definitely that collaboration can help you in creating those resources.
I love that idea. And actually, I hadn't thought about it when I first said, like, part of a coach's job needs to be to facilitate teacher collaboration. My initial thought was, you need to create digital structures to connect teachers to one another. But goodness, I mean, before in real schools, teachers don't get to watch one another teach. They don't get to learn in those great, what's going on in the great classroom right next door to them. But they certainly can't now, because that great classroom next door is in somebody's house across town. And so the act of just going in, and you have to be clear about it and you have to be careful about it. But as a coach, you can go in and you can say, listen, I'm an excavator. I'm a learning archaeologist. I'm just going around from digital classroom to digital classroom to see what everybody's doing, so that I can maybe take the great thing that you're doing and share it with someone who needs it in a classroom. That's a great idea. But also creating those more formal digital structures so that there is time in the week, or maybe it's not all at the same time, maybe it's asynchronous, but there's a way for me to go in and say, hey, here's a lesson that I created for Tuesday that I think other people on the team might like. Go take it. Don't recreate it, because there's so much material that needs to be created right now. And just crowdsourcing that, I think, is incredibly important.
Yeah, helping teachers crowdsource and divide and conquer. And, I don't know, I'd almost argue that it's maybe even easier now than it was before to take a peek into instruction in another teacher's classroom, because it's all digital, right? And so we can share those digital resources, take screenshots of things that we're having students do, share links, share our video of where I did a mini lesson for my math class over this concept because I couldn't find one in one of the other resources that we use. So again, you want to make sure that your teachers are comfortable with those types of things, but that's a really great way to help everybody collaborate and connect together and crowdsource, like you said. Yeah.
And I think it has a really good connection to sort of the last sort of model for instructional coaching remotely, which is being a coach, right? I mean, like doing the work of actually being a coach. And we like to use, we're all big fans of Gym Nights, and we like to use the impact cycle as sort of a model for how that might look. But that's a great way to do the most important part of the impact cycle right now, which is assess your current reality, right?
Yeah, it's changed, right? So you've got to reassess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your current reality is a whole new reality in every single way. And in some ways, a new way, right? There are some new realities that we have to address. So, we've been talking about a digital classroom as a Zoom environment, as a webinar, as a LMS, and all those sorts of things. But part of assessing the current reality is, can my students even access those materials? And if they can't access those materials, what am I going to do for them? I was watching a video on YouTube of a teacher who was talking about, it's heartbreaking to log into that Zoom room and to see the same 5 kids not show up every day, right? Mm-hmm. That they're not able to get online to watch that stuff. Now, there may be a way to reach them, right? I live in Houston, and I saw in Houston that there was a recent assessment of access to the internet in students' homes, and about a quarter of the students in HISD, where I used to work, don't have access to the internet at their house. But a lot of them have phones, right? And so you're having to think about, okay, if they can't get on from a computer, can they get on from a phone? And if they can get on the internet from a phone, how do I have to alter the materials that they're accessing? But really thinking deeply about assessing that current reality and really thinking about what are the things that students have? What are the things that students need? What's going on in their homes? What are the parent supports that they have? All of those sorts of things. And then thinking about what's my current reality with my access to our curriculum? What are the tech resources that I've got? What are all the digital tools? Goodness, you probably had just training after training after training after training of all these digital tools for the past 5 years of your life or 10 years of your life. And maybe you've used 10% of them, but now you're like, oh, do I need to be using something that I hadn't been using before?
The time is now. Right.
So the coach can help create that inventory, right? So that it's easy for them to know what their current reality is.
Yeah, and the special educator in me would be remiss if I didn't share. I'm going to share my screen here. Let me find it. One of my favorite resources that I've been for anyone who's an interventionist and kind of going, how do I support my exceptional learners and how do I help provide specially designed instruction or some academic supports to them with the things that our general education teachers are providing. And I just want to share that the Council for Exceptional Children has created some really great content, and they're offering free membership right now for anybody. They had a great webinar on doing special education remotely. So if you're looking for some of those supports for your teachers to support those exceptional children who maybe have the access to technology and some support at home, but require some additional accommodations or modifications, and you're wondering what that looks like remotely, so many great resources here. And again, they've got a free membership from now into May 31st. So check that out if you're looking for a tool. But really, I think you're right. It's assessing where we currently are and identifying that current reality, identifying those current needs. You said something in our pre-show conversation, it's looking at who's been responding and the types of responses. And, is there maybe an area where the prompt wasn't clear? So I've got students responding, but nobody's actually getting to the part that we needed to have a conversation of. So how do we go back and assess what that looks like and remediate where we need to? So,
and it's going to evolve, right? I mean, it's going to be changing from week to week. Your current reality is constantly shifting. And I think it's an important role for the coach to help the teacher remember that, because, in stressful times, it's human nature to make assumptions. And so when we're stressed, we just assume things. Oh, that kid hasn't logged in. They can't get on the internet. Well, do you know that, or are you just assuming that?
Right.
And so helping to say, well, teacher, don't worry about it. I'm going to give their parents a call and see if I can get a hold of them and talk to them. So doing that sort of wraparound services, providing some additional supports to students that the teacher may not have the time to do, is a great thing for the coach. But then once they set that current reality, then it's time to start thinking about those goals. And again, typically I think in the impact cycle, we like to think, Jem likes to recommend that those goals be actionable and they be, those peers goals, but also, they're usually kind of long-term, right?
Right.
Long-term goals are a good time. And by long-term, I mean 3 weeks right now, right?
That's long-term right now. Yeah.
Let's set a goal for Monday.
A week is a year in COVID time. So.
Yeah. So, setting goals that are achievable within a very short, very specific period of time. I just wrote a blog post for our blog about mini habits and the need to have sort of embarrassing goals sometimes so that you have impressive results rather than having impressive goals and embarrassing results. Now it's time to feel like I am achieving, because there's so little achievement in the world right now. So for a teacher, if you can help them set goals where they're like, man, I knocked that out of the park and it took me a day to do it, that builds that momentum and makes teachers feel a little bit more efficacy about what's happening in their classroom.
Yeah, and that's also a great parallel tip for teachers who maybe found that their students were a little bit overwhelmed. I mean, I'll tell you, the first week I had some criers, and it wasn't always me in the online learning because a little overwhelmed. Like I couldn't. There's one music app that you're supposed to have the space bar at specific notes, and that was the most maddening thing for my fourth grader. Lots and lots of tears happened over that, and so just kind of thinking about, again, those little bitty things. A lot of schools are starting with just spiraling old content. It's a great place to start. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect right now. Let's just get everybody comfortable and then continue pushing that envelope for sure. So, in talking about that stress, and I know, when you were on last, we talked about Devolson, and you and I are big Maslow fans. My psychology background definitely loves that. So what's your final tip for our coaches as we round out our conversation today?
Yeah, so I mean, Maslow, it's the most important thing right now. You've got to really start thinking about, I think that there is an evolutionary nature to psychological needs. It's different from day to day. There have been days where Sibme is a remote team, right? So we all work remotely. We all don't interact with one another in an office. And so we're all over the place. We work in different time zones. So it was a pretty easy adaptation, I think, especially for me personally, because I'm kind of antisocial. So like I like to not talk to people anyway. But every day I wake up and it's a new day, right? And so taking that time, for some teachers, they may be home alone. They may not have anybody else around. Right. And as the coach, having somebody check in with you every day and just say, we're not hold on before we start talking about your goals for your classroom or assessing what your student needs are or any of that sort of stuff. How are you? Were you able to get toilet paper last week? I heard you needed to go to the grocery store. Were they covering up their mouths at the checkout center? I mean, all that sort of stuff. Really taking time to make sure that everyone in this environment feels safe, that they're having their basic needs met. that they feel a sense of belonging. I mean, we're very isolated from one another. And so it can become the coach's role to help these teachers feel connected to one another. And, it's funny, I've talked to a lot of my former colleagues and former students who are teachers now, and a lot of them are just, the thing they long for the most and the thing that they love the most is that Zoom room, because they get to see their kids.
Yes. Oh my gosh. My 5-year-old had her first Zoom yesterday for dance. They set up, should have seen her in her little dance recital outfit because she wanted to wear the official recital outfit in the kitchen. We cleared out the whole kitchen and she was so excited and she kept saying, I can't see me. If I can't see me, they can't see me. But it matters. And the dance instructors, and some of them are teenagers in supporting that class, and some of them are the formal instructors. They love that. I mean, I agree. That is absolutely, that connection piece is important for sure.
And I mean, I'm wearing blue today because I'm trying to participate in honoring all of the wonderful healthcare workers who are doing amazing things. Sorry, I got emotional.
They are doing amazing stuff.
But the doctors and the nurses and the medical techs who are literally putting their lives at risk for in this terrible time. But teachers are heroes too, right? And they're in stressful situations, and it is breaking their hearts to not see those kids log into Zoom and all those sorts of things. So they need that extra sense of belonging. They need that extra, someone to lift them up. And I think that's something that a coach, I know a lot of coaches who are really good at that just on a day-to-day basis. They're just good at it. It's a part of their job on the campus. So find ways to do that digitally. It might be, doing a book club, like we used to call them, on Friday at 5:00, and having everybody join into Zoom and just organizing that so that people are really still taking time to connect with one another, and that it's not just about providing these essential services, but we still have the job of providing these essential services. Mm-hmm. I mean, education is an essential service. It's absolutely necessary for the well-being of all of us. And for every family who's cooped up in their house, having a way for their kids to be occupied while they're either working or worrying about the fact that they can't work is a huge service to families and to those parents and those caretakers for those kids. And so, teachers are absolutely essential right now. They're absolutely crucial to the success of all of this and our ability to weather all of this by providing that structure, by providing that way to engage kids throughout the day so that they're not getting cabin fever and going crazy and running around the room while you're trying to have a meeting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And when we think about all the different ways that we can support that as coaches. And, one of my favorite questions, I like to ask, how are you? But I also really like the question, what's on your mind? And that comes from The Coach Habit. And it's one of Jim Knight's favorite books as well. And it's just a great way to kind of open it up, not make it feel like it's like, how's class going? But what's on your mind? Tell me how you're doing. And then, knowing that sometimes we have to look for some of those signals that, someone may say they're fine, but we have to be aware of that and know where, I think a lot of the teachers I've coached are a lot like me, a little bit of a perfectionist. And so just helping them remember right now, just to give yourself grace, and we're all going to make it through this. And yeah. So I love that. I love that reminder of looking back at this hierarchy of needs and Maslow and his work. So thank you so much for joining us today, TJ. As always, it's a great conversation, and I know we're going to have you back again soon. So,
thanks a lot, Cory. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a great day.